you play pickleball, you may have seen high-level players serving like this, as opposed to this. Possibly the most famous example of this is Quang Duong. Although he was recently cut from the PPA and MLP, before this, he was taking the world by storm with his unorthodox technique and his crazy power and spin. His serve, though, is possibly the most distinct shot in his arsenal. By making use of these three techniques, Quang Duong probably gets the most spin and power of any player in pickleball. In this video, I'm going to take you through each one of these and show you how you can apply them to your own serve. Before we get into the technique, though, I want to talk about our new paddle, the Gen 4.5. It's only been out for about a week, and in that time, we've already sold out of our first few shipments. If you're interested in getting the paddle and you want to reserve a spot in one of the next shipments, make sure to head to our site and use code FOAM so that you can get one of these for $155. And guys, the reviewers on YouTube are going crazy about this paddle. They all love it and they think it's one of the best foam paddles in the market. So the fact that it's $155 is insane. So if you want to try the Gen 4.5, head to our site now. So probably the most defining part of Quang's serve is his grip, so how he's holding the paddle. And as you see, he kind of points it back away from him, which is very unique. But before I show you that, I'm going to show it later in the video. I want to show you where he's getting most of his power from. So this is another thing he does a little bit differently than other players. And it's what he does with his legs and his rotation. So when Quang is hitting a serve, he starts off really low a lot of the time like this, right? And as he's hitting it, he springs up. So not a lot of players do this sort of explosion upward. But what that does is it gives him more energy into the ball and it gives him more upward momentum, which gives him more spin. So he starts a little bit low and he springs up into the court. And there is a rule, you can't jump into the court when you're serving, guys. When you're hitting the serve, one foot has to be in contact with the ground behind the baseline. So he sort of times it so he's coming up and he hits the ball right when he's at the top of that explosion. And then after he sort of explodes up, he swings through the court. So we call this a pivot step, actually. You can do it on your forehand drive as well, where you go like this, but he does it on his serve. So he springs up, and sometimes his foot ends up in the court, which is totally fine if you do it after you hit the ball. So he hits the ball with his foot behind the line, then he flings into the court with this pivot step. So he's low, then he flings into the court like this. And he has that grip, which I'm going to show you, but he starts off with the bent knees, and he's sort of edging the legality of hitting the ball too low or too high. So as you know, you need to hit the ball below your waist. He's right on the edge there, which a lot of pros do this. He's right on the edge of where it's legal, so it gives him a really good angle over the net. I recommend to actually do this. You shouldn't be hitting it super low. You want to hit it at the highest point you can. Obviously, don't hit it at your shoulder, but you can hit it at your waist, and if no one's calling it, that's fine. Follow the rules, but give yourself the biggest advantage you can. So if you want to serve like Quang, low base, bend your knees to start, explode upward, and then fling your shoulders and hips into the court. I'll show you a few examples. Now looking at his grip, so what he does differently, and a lot of players actually starting to do this specifically on their serve, is he uses a semi-western grip. So a semi-western grip is where I line up this knuckle to this notch right here. So on previous videos, I've called this a western. Some people got mad at me. They say this is a semi-western and this is a western. So we're calling it the semi-western now. And it's where your knuckle is lined up with this notch. So where my index finger meets my hand, this knuckle right here, this little corner, where this lines up with the grip, which is this little angled notch to the right of the big notch. So this would be an Eastern grip where my knuckle is lined up with the center. I actually serve like this, and most pros I'd say serve with an Eastern grip. And some people serve with a continental grip. I don't recommend this. You don't get as much spin when you do this. But Quang is like, no, I'm serving with my tennis grip. I'm gonna use the semi-western. And when he does this, he gets a lot more spin. So you just get more natural spin when you're in this grip. And what this grip does is it forces you to have a more downward angling hand when you hit the ball. So it just gives you more natural spin. It's not rocket science. And a lot of players are doing this now. One of my friends, Roscoe Bellamy, he kind of uses something like this. Quang is probably a little more extreme, but it gives you more natural spin. So sometimes it makes you go down if you haven't tried it. I don't use this grip, so I'm not really used to it. But when you do it, it gives you crazy spin without really having to try. So should every player have this grip on their serve? I don't think so. But if you have an Eastern grip, what you could do is maybe angle it a little bit more on your serve and get a little bit more spin on this shot. Because the serve, you have more control. So maybe you do better with an Eastern on your drive, but on a serve, maybe you go a little bit more under towards the semi-Western. and that gives you more of the natural spin. I know for a fact a lot of players serve with a semi-western and then hit their drives with an eastern. So it's something to experiment with. Do you need to have a semi-western on your serve? No. You can hit a lot of spin with an eastern, and it's a very effective way to serve. Most players do that. But if you want to try to do it like Quang, maybe try semi-western. Odds are if you weren't a tennis player, it's not going to feel very natural, but give it a try. You have to make sure if you're doing it, you hit through the ball, because with this grip, you're going to want to roll over it. Make sure you extend through the ball, and you should naturally get the spin on its own. So you won't have to focus as much on brushing. You kind of just need to extend forward and try to hit it clean, because it's very easy to mishit it, and it's very easy to shank it with this grip because of how much your paddle is going to be facing down like this. So the last part of Quang's serve that makes it super unique is how he goes from here to here. So if you watch it, he has this extreme grip where he's pointing the paddle backwards behind him. This is something that makes his serve very unique that not a lot of players do. I actually probably don't recommend doing this. But what he does is he goes from here and then he rapidly goes to here to accelerate forward. And that gives you a ton of power. This is what I call the flashlight position. But he's doing what I'd call, I guess, the aggressive flashlight. He almost flips directly into it, and then he leads with his elbow into the ball. And what this does is it kind of turns your hand into a slingshot of power. So he goes from here, and he gets a crazy amount of energy by doing this, then he leads forward with his elbow. So this is something, you don't need to be doing this on your serve. You definitely don't need to be doing this. But you definitely want to be getting to this position like he does, and leading with your elbow. So if you're serving with a normal loop where you go like this, just really focus on tugging towards your target with your elbow and then letting your paddle lag behind. This is where a lot of your power is going to come from. And also with the flashlight, you can kind of flex upward when you hit the ball, and that's where a lot of your spin is going to come from too. So the combination of him springing up, getting into the court, flashlight, and his elbow is just giving him so much power and so much spin. And because of the spin, he's actually able to be more consistent with it, because when you hit a crazy amount of spin, it limits the chances that you're going to sail the ball long. So he hits hard, he rarely misses his serve, and he has a crazy amount of spin. So when it bounces, there's a high chance his opponents are going to shank the ball, give him a bad return, so that he can use his drives, which I actually talked about in the video I made last week about Quang. He's very good with his drives. So if you want to watch a video where I break down his other technique, you can go check out that. But just know, as you're hitting this shot, lead with your elbow, point that butt cap forward, and you're going to get way more power. And guys, as I mentioned, you don't need to copy his technique to a T. You definitely shouldn't probably copy his technique in most cases to a T. You're better off using, the grip that you're most comfortable with. But there are some takeaways from this video that you can definitely make your serve better with. So don't copy him to a T. Try these things out, and I'm sure you'll serve with way more power and way more spin. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.